From the moment Far Cry 4 was first announced earlier this year, and I believe it was right before E3 that they officially confirmed its existence, to me I always pictured it as one of those don't screw it up situations. And what I mean by that is that Far Cry 3 was my favorite game of 2012, and I sort of wanted to see that gameplay reimagined for a next generation of consoles. And that's kind of exactly what Far Cry 4 seems to be. It's that core gameplay loop that you know from Far Cry 3, but just a little bit prettier, maybe slightly more refined with a few new mechanics. It's not, I don't think, going to blow anyone's minds or even surprise anyone, but it is that game again, but prettier and with a little bit more content. And to me, that's enough. I almost prefer, and this is weird, to think of it as like a Far Cry 3 expansion pack. It is not hyper novel, I don't think, but it's really exciting to me as a fan of the first game, and I am a huge fan of the first game, Far Cry 3. So right off the bat, there are a couple new features that stand out. I think the first one that everyone saw in some of those gameplay demos on stage at E3 this year was the ability to shoot and drive at the same time. And that was shown but not really explained in depth. And I got my first real hands-on with that mechanic, and they found some really clever ways to make that work. So first of all, the controls are actually a little weird and almost reminiscent of Halo. Because you still use left trigger and right trigger to aim your gun and shoot your gun respectively, the left stick now controls all of your driving. So forward on the left stick accelerates, backwards on the left stick drives you backwards, and then left and right on the left stick drives you left and right. And the reason they do that is so you're still able to aim with your gun, but for me as a huge Far Cry 3 fan who played a lot of that game, it was really hard for me to not get in a car, squeeze the right trigger to drive, and immediately just start shooting out the front windshield on accident. That's something that I think you'll just get used to with time. But like you're probably imagining, the driving in the Far Cry games since Far Cry 1, but also 2 and 3 and 4, has always been this really like frenetic, chaotic, bumpy experience, for lack of a better word. And it's no different in 4. And the way that they account for that is really, really clever. There's a system called Autodrive, and basically anytime that you have your eyes off the road or anytime that you have your gun out, you have the ability to turn on a feature called Autodrive. I think by default it enables automatically, and basically what happens is you still hold up on the left stick to accelerate, but the game takes care of all the steering for you. So let's say you're going down like a street and there's some enemies behind you or to the side, you can safely turn around and shoot behind you and aim at them while holding forward on the stick and just assume that you're not going to go off the road or careening off a ledge. Now it's not perfect. I think by design it's not perfect. So let's say you are driving up a road and there is an enemy vehicle coming down the same dirt path that you're on. Autodrive is not going to get you out of the way of that vehicle. You're going to have a full head-on collision. And there were a couple moments I felt like where Autodrive maybe led me into a tree or off a cliff, although I was still getting my bearings with the system at that point, so maybe that was just my experience. But it's a really clever and I think thoughtfully flawed system that allows you to sort of shoot while driving without completely getting rid of your necessity to pay attention to the road. Now you also have the ability to click the left stick at any time and turn on auto drive. So even if you're not shooting at guys or looking out the window or staring behind you, you can have the game automatically steer for you. There was one point in the demo where I was driving to a waypoint that was 1,000 meters away. We started basically at the very beginning, like I said, so we really didn't have a lot of fast travel unlocked. So I was driving to this very distant waypoint, didn't really feel like driving all the way there, so I just clicked auto drive, held forward on the left stick, and just read text messages while I was on the way to this very distant destination. And I feel like it's going to be a matter of personal preference and self-control how much you turn on auto drive, because on the one hand, it took away some of the tedium of just driving in a straight line to a destination, but on the other hand, it made the game a little bit less interactive. Now, because this is Far Cry 4 and it is a lot like Far Cry 3, you will still encounter chaos on the road, you will still encounter enemy vehicles or animals. At one point in my demo, and I think we have footage of this, I just discovered a pack of elephants and I climbed onto the back of one of them, and right when I did that, some enemies rolled up, so I walked towards them, hit them with my elephant, and their vehicle just went completely flying into the air, ragdolls going up into the sky. So there is still a little bit of that emergent chaos that you've come to expect from Far Cry 3. But yeah, I think the auto drive system is a very interesting, pretty clever, and mostly unprecedented system for driving in an open world game. The closest thing I can imagine to it is how some of the middle Saints Row games started adding that cruise control feature, but that was obviously very, very limited, just drove you in a straight line. It really just held down the acceleration for you. This is much more robust. I think the best way to think of it is think of all the AI drivers that you see in Far Cry 3 and 4, except for this time, it's the AI is controlling the steering for you, but you're controlling the acceleration. Like if you hit a corner at full speed with auto drive on, you will still kind of drift around the corner and kind of go off the road a bit. it's a really smart solution, I think, and I'm going to be interested to see how my relationship with that develops as I play more of the finished game. And one final note about the shooting while driving, there is a pretty generous amount of auto aim. I think you can see in this clip here that it isn't just aiming where your reticle is aiming. It will basically home in and lock onto enemies in certain situations to make it more realistic for you to hit them, because the game is, again, very, very rickety as a driving experience. But yeah, the shooting while driving is extremely functional. It feels like a natural progression for the series and is a welcome addition, I think. And speaking of things that feel like natural additions to the series, this has co-op now, and I played about, I'd say 20 to 30 minutes, maybe a little less, of co-op with a random colleague who was also in the area, and it is exactly what you'd think it would be. I mean, I think anyone who played Far Cry 3 felt like that game was like conspicuously missing a co-op feature. There were all these passenger seats, all these two-person vehicles. There were myriad examples in that game of things that felt like they were meant to be played cooperatively, but that game just simply didn't have the feature. Now it is here and it works exactly the way you would think it does. So me and the buddy of mine cleared a couple of outposts together, and it was kind of neat to be able to, for example, pull out binoculars and spot enemies for my co-op buddy to take down. It seems like just a very welcome, very obvious fit for the game, and it's actually the thing that feels the newest to me and the most exciting about Far Cry 4. It is a game, I think, that is remarkably like the third game, like I keep saying, but the co-op is legitimately new to the series and seems like a really great way to share the experiences of that sort of open playground. I just have a lot of really great memories in Far Cry 3 of these crazy, just sort of emergent things happening to me, these stories involving animals jumping into a camp, and being able to share that with a buddy and have one more unpredictable player and one more point of chaos in this already very chaotic world is a very natural evolution, I think, for the series to take. If I could describe my time with Far Cry 4 in a word, it would be the word familiar. It's just that same basic gameplay loop that you know from Far Cry 3, brought forward to the current generation with these sort of beautiful graphics, really incredible draw distances, everything looks really nice. Even the story, I feel like, is familiar, at least tonally, to what you'd expect from Far Cry 3. It's got that same sort of conversational style and the way the characters talk, and maybe that's not for everyone, but I always enjoyed that aspect of the games. Yeah, it's very much what I think you would expect from a Far Cry sequel, or to a sequel to the most successful Far Cry game ever. It's that, again, but prettier with co-op and a few new elements. If you have any questions, by the way, about my time with Far Cry 4, just leave them in the comments below. I do my best to answer all the questions you leave there. Or you can reach me on Twitter. I am twitter.com/Babylonian. And yeah, the game comes out very, very soon. I believe November 18th is the release date. And I'm kind of looking forward to just getting back into the world of Far Cry and causing chaos, this time on a generation of consoles where sharing video of the crazy stuff that just happened is easier than it's ever been. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. When the original Bayonetta came out in 2010, it was an unexpected joy for me. I'd button mashed my way through a couple character action games in the past, but none of them had ever grabbed me quite the way Bayonetta did. Something about the combination of smooth, responsive, over-the-top combat, this iconic